You are seriously lucky, because you just came across another intense and highly entertaining film. If you finish it and still find it boring, then come back and blame me. When you hear the words Korean chaebol, you probably imagine endless luxury, beautiful women everywhere, and power so vast it feels like they control half the world. But once you truly get close to them, you begin to realize that behind the polished surface, these powerful figures are far more unsettling than they first appear. In their world, ordinary people are often pushed into impossible situations, and once power and profit take over, human lives can be treated as nothing more than part of a larger game. What makes it even more disturbing is that the people who should step in often remain silent, allowing these forces to grow bolder and bring that pressure straight into ordinary homes. By sheer accident, they end up at the home of a boxing champion. So next, let me show you how this champion boxer takes on an entire chaebol empire all on his own. At a boxing match held in Korea, two fighters step onto the scale with absolute confidence. The tattooed man is the world champion, a longtime ruler of the heavyweight belt, and this polite, simple young man is the challenger, and also our main character, Gun-woo. He cherishes this opportunity deeply.
I'm gonna bust your face open! I kill you! You are dead tomorrow!
Anyone who has watched boxing knows that before a match, both fighters usually go through the trash talk phase, but this tattooed guy plays dirty and suddenly slaps Gun-woo across the face, which instantly angers the coaching staff. What should have been a match between two people suddenly turns into a full-blown brawl. Thankfully, Gun-woo was not the kind of person who starts trouble, and he forces himself to stay calm, because the place is packed with reporters and fans, and he decides to deal with this guy properly in the ring the next day. As the host announces the start of the fight, the two fighters launch into an intense battle. At first, both of them are just testing the waters, with neither side making any big moves, constantly probing, constantly measuring each other up. But after all, the other man is the national champion, and with just one brief lapse in attention, Gun-woo gets dropped to the canvas by a single punch. As he lies on the ground, the camera cuts to a man in a hat. His eyes are cold and sharp, and he seems to carry a deep grudge against one of the men in the ring.
저 새끼 무조건 철창에 집어넣어.
After that, Gun-woo pulls himself back up through sheer willpower. He starts changing his strategy, no longer staying tangled up with his opponent, and instead uses his quick footwork to his advantage. Finally, the first round comes to an end, and Gun-woo is drenched in sweat, while the other guy looks completely unfazed. If this keeps going, forget about challenging for the title. He might not even last through the match. So his best friend, and also his personal coach, Woo-jin, immediately comes up with a new strategy for Gun-woo.
사모 장전해. 형이 골 때릴게.
Sure enough, strategy number 3 shows an obvious effect, and he starts going back and forth with his opponent in the fight. He is like a wild lion, constantly putting pressure on the other man, with Woo-jin guiding him from below the ring. He finally forces his opponent into a corner, then Gun-woo seizes the moment, breaks through his defense, and lands a heavy punch right on the corner of his eye. Just as he is about to follow up with a second punch, the second round suddenly comes to an end, when the fans see blood starting to pour from the other man's eye. The crowd instantly erupts, and all of them are completely won over by the unstoppable Gun-woo. Now all he has to do is wait for the third round, and keep targeting that injured eye. Then Gun-woo can become this year's national champion. But kind-hearted Gun-woo does not want to do that, because if he does, there is a real chance the other man could lose sight in one eye. So he decides to use another strategy to knock him out. As the referee gives the command, both fighters enter the final stage, but the moment the opponent gets up, he accidentally notices the man in the hat sitting in the audience. The sight of him makes the opponent panic instantly, and he even loses all spirit in the fight. Gun-woo catches that opening and blasts him with a sharp left jab. That single punch sends him dropping to his knees in the ring, his whole body seeming to lose control, and he cannot even get back to his feet. Seeing how badly the opponent has fallen apart, the referee has no choice but to stop the fight at once. In the end, Gun-woo becomes the national champion, finally achieving the dream he has carried since childhood.
You good fighter. Forget what I said. It's just business.
As the fans continue to cheer, This incredible match slowly comes to a close, but before the opponent can even get treatment for his injured eye, several large men drag him into an underground fight club. It turns out that he owes a huge amount of gambling debt, and after losing everything, he has no way to pay it back. So these criminal forces force him to throw fights to settle the debt, and even use his daughter to threaten him, making it clear that if he does not cooperate, things will get much worse. With no way out left, the desperate boxer can only walk into the cage. At first, he thought they only wanted to use his fame and have him cooperate in a fight, but as the amount of money being wagered behind the scenes kept rising, it became clear that this was far more complicated than it looked. Very soon, his opponent walked in, and it was the man in the hat from the audience, the real boss behind everyone in that place. He was cold and ruthless, once a boxing champion himself, and his name was Baek Jong, a man whose obsession with competition had twisted him, because he controlled a global underground betting site for illegal fights. He had even built the IKFC boxing league. As the fight began, Baek Jong immediately landed a punch on his opponent's injured eye. He targeted the weak spot on purpose, and since they were fighting bare-knuckled, blood burst out instantly, leaving the opponent barely able to see. Baek Jong seized the chance right away, and then unleashed a brutal beating on the other man, not giving him even the slightest opportunity to fight back. This was completely different from a professional match, with no referee, no rules, no audience, only a pack of thrill-seeking gamblers and the ruthless Baek Jong. And just as expected, the opponent was beaten so badly that he completely lost the will to resist, then dropped to the ground like a lifeless body. When Baek Jong saw that the man was barely breathing, he suddenly ordered his men to shut off the cameras, then started hammering the man's face like it was a punching bag. No one knew how much time had passed before Baek Jong finally walked out of the cage. Looking at the $700 million in wagers on the screen, he still was not satisfied, and his thoughts soon turned to Gun-woo. Meanwhile,
저 새끼 이긴 새끼 잡아와. 네, 알겠습니다.
after a round of examinations at the hospital, they discovered that the opponent still had a heartbeat, but instead of trying to save him, they planned to strip everything from him and sell off every last usable part for a huge profit. At the same time, Baek Jong quickly led his men to Gun-woo's house. When Gun-woo's mother saw that they were strangers, and Gun-woo was not home, she did not want to open the door for them, but they lied and said they were Gun-woo's fellow boxers, and that they had come to discuss his next match with him. His innocent mother believed their lies, so she invited the two men into the house, but just moments after they stepped inside, Gun-woo and Woo-jin came back. The moment they saw two unfamiliar pairs of shoes at the door, they instantly realized something was wrong, because they did not know these people at all. Woo-jin then told his mother to go back to her room first.
누구세요? 난 IKFC라는 복싱 리그를 운영하고 있어. 너 내 리그에서 뛰자.
The two of them had been in the boxing world for years, but this was the first time they had ever heard that name, and they had no interest in it. So they told them to leave their house immediately, but the visitors did not budge at all, and they claimed that their league had 4 million members worldwide. That Gun-woo joining them would make the league a fortune, and at the same time would bring Gun-woo 10 times more money than he was making now. As he spoke, he placed a black bag in front of them, and inside it was a full 1 billion won in cash, meant to be Gun-woo's signing fee. When he noticed that Gun-woo and Woo-jin were beginning to hesitate, Baek Jong started coaxing and misleading them, saying that athletes like them were bound to get hurt sooner or later, so they might as well fight one match for the league and never worry about money again. Just as the two of them were hesitating, Gun-woo's mother, who had been hiding by the staircase, suddenly walked downstairs and said that she did not need that much money, and she did not want her son taking that kind of risk, because money gained the wrong way would always come with a price. The two young men had always listened to their mother the most, and once she had spoken, they told the men to leave at once. But Baek Jong had no sense of restraint, and actually started insulting Gun-woo's mother. That instantly pushed Woo-jin over the edge, and the two sides nearly came to blows because of it. Then one of the men, trying to intimidate them, pulled a spiral dagger out of his pocket and pointed it right in front of Gun-woo.
닥쳐. 난 내가 원하는 건 무조건 이뤄. 넌 꼭 나랑 싸우게 될 거야. 또 보자.
After they left, Gun-woo and Woo-jin immediately went to find an old friend, People called him Korea's little know-it-all, because no matter how big or small the matter was, he could usually dig up something on it. But they had clearly underestimated Baekjeon's reach, because even after searching all across Korea and digging through every record they could find, they still could not find a single trace of him. And there was not even any information on the IKFC boxing league that Baekjeon had supposedly created. But Baekjeon had claimed they had 4 million members around the world, and yet they could not even track down one single member, which showed just how deeply hidden this group really was. Meanwhile, in order to fully secure Gun-woo as his next cash cow, Baekjeon had his men look for 4 prisoners serving life sentences. These 4 men had physical clashes with Gun-woo back in the first season. If they could get them out of prison now, it would be a very useful move. But 4 men were too obvious a target. So in the end, Baekjeon chose only one, a fierce-looking man named Kang In-beom.
탁월한 선택이십니다.
But helping a living man break out of prison was not something that could be done in just a day or two. So one of his men suggested that if time was short, Baekjeon should spend some money and hire a professional security team instead, because they would handle things efficiently and would be less likely to expose the operation. As it happened, that man knew a security company founded by a former presidential protection team. Not long ago, their sales director had fallen out with the company's representative, and as a result, the staff had gone unpaid for several months. So as long as Baekjeon was willing to pay, they would obey him without hesitation. As for Kang In-beom, he was certain to play an important role in what would come later between him and Gun-woo. Very soon, over at the prison, Kang In-beom received a novel, and a note hidden inside immediately caught his attention. It said that at 1 o'clock in the afternoon the day after tomorrow, if he swallowed the pill, it would help him escape. The moment Kang In-beom saw it, he became interested at once, because for someone serving a life sentence, the chance to get out was enough to make anyone excited. That night, Baekjeon's men found the security team and began their operation. They gathered downstairs outside Gun-woo's apartment building, and first used hacking tools to shut down all the cameras inside the home. The moment the door lock was opened, 3 men dressed in black quietly slipped inside. Their target this time was not Gun-woo or Woo-jin, but Gun-woo's mother, because they planned to use this weakness to force Gun-woo to submit. As Gun-woo's mother slept, the 3 men moved in, covered her mouth and nose, put a hood over her head, then picked her up and ran for the door. But thankfully, she kept struggling, and one of the men lost his grip and fell to the ground, and the noise instantly woke Gun-woo and Woo-jin. They rushed toward the door at once. Woo-jin then ran out of the room as well and immediately tried to stop the 3 men. But these were people who had once protected a president, and their fighting skills were still completely sharp, catching the 2 of them off guard. As Woo-jin watched Gun-woo's mother being taken farther and farther away, he used every ounce of strength to hold 2 of them back, while Gun-woo jumped down from the 2nd floor and directly blocked the guard's path. But these men were incredibly cunning, and another one suddenly charged down from upstairs and blocked Gun-woo's path. Even though Gun-woo was the national champion, his fighting skills could barely come into play against them, because every one of them was heavily built and armed, so the 2 of them could only defend themselves while fighting back. Woo-jin still had some chance upstairs, but Gun-woo had a much harder time downstairs. Not only did he have to take on 2 men at once, he also had to deal with an electric baton. As expected, Gun-woo was hit and immediately brought down by the shock. Fortunately, Woo-jin managed to knock his opponent away in time and rushed downstairs to help Gun-woo. The man waiting outside in the car saw that the job still was not done after all this time, so he drove off ahead of schedule. Once the security team received the message, they also began to retreat one by one, although they left Gun-woo's mother behind. Once Gun-woo came to his senses, there was no way he was going to let them go that easily, so he immediately rushed outside and chased after the car. But just as they chased them to an intersection, the car suddenly burst into flames, and no one inside made it out. The moment Gun-woo saw that, he was completely stunned, but he had no time to think about it, because his mother was still back at home. In fact, all of this had been arranged by Baekjeon, because he was afraid the security team might expose his identity. So once the mission failed, he had everyone silenced. That really proved one thing: making dirty money always comes with a heavy price. The next day, The police came to Gun-woo's house to look for clues, but because the cameras had been hacked, they had not captured any useful information, and since everyone had been wearing masks and hats, Gun-woo and Woo-jin could not give any clear description of their faces either, so the police suggested that the three of them move somewhere else for the time being, in case this group launched another attack. Inside the burned-out car, the police found a scorched wallet, and inside it was a half-damaged business card, and on it were 4 clear words, "Security Company." That became their first lead in tracking down the people behind the attack. Meanwhile, with nowhere else to go, the troubled family of 3 had no choice but to stay at a friend's house. This friend knew a bit about computers, so Gun-woo asked her to look into what IKFC really was. But after searching every domestic website he could find, the friend still could not find any related information. That made she feel even more suspicious. Just to test a possibility, he opened the dark web. The dark web was a place where all kinds of dangerous people gathered, and illegal goods and every kind of criminal trade could be found there. Sure enough, this so-called boxing league finally surfaced. From the promotional video on the site alone, it was obvious that this was not some underground boxing competition at all. It was a deadly business. They were using fighters' lives to make money, drawing gamblers in and pushing them to place bigger bets. And once the stakes grew higher and higher, Baek-jong would start manipulating everything behind the scenes, even hiding metal inside one fighter's glove, so that once it landed on the opponent, it could easily tear through flesh, leaving the other man unable to continue and sometimes even costing him his life. And that was exactly why Baek-jong had gone to such lengths to find Gun-woo. The friend wanted to dig deeper into the organization's secrets, but soon discovered that he needed to register as a member before he could access more information. And during registration, a credit card was required. Anyone familiar with the dark web knew that you should never enter real credit card information there, because there was no way of knowing who might steal the data or what they might do with it.
제가 여기를 뚫기 전에 그 사람들이 먼저 이 컴퓨터를 뚫고 바이러스까지 심어서 이 컴퓨터를 인질로 삼을 수도 있어요. 다크웹에는 제가 상상조차 못하는 엄청난 고수들이 있어서.
So the only option now was to register using someone else's credit card, and that person had to be someone already dead. With no other choice left, Woo-jin had no choice but to head out and ask an older acquaintance for help. But what they never imagined was that every single move they made had already been watched from start to finish by Baek-jong's men. After all, for someone capable of building a site like that, breaking into Korea's surveillance system was almost effortless. The moment he met the senior, Woo-jin told him everything that had happened recently. So the second the dark web was mentioned, the senior immediately understood why Woo-jin had come, and handed him 3 anonymous credit cards. The original owners of those 3 cards were already dead, so there was no need to worry about their identities being traced. But with just the 2 of them being ordinary boxers, they were never going to be a real match for Baek-jong. So the senior simply suggested that they fight this criminal force together, because when the younger generation is in trouble, there is no way the seniors could just stand by and do nothing.
하나보다는 둘이 낫고 누구들 둘보다는 셋이 안 낫겠냐? 잡아. 선배가 끝까지 밀어줄라니까.
A senior was still a senior after all, and once he realized the enemy could even break into their home, he knew these people were capable of almost anything, so he told Woo-jin to deliberately drive around the area first, just to see whether anyone was following behind them. Sure enough, the sharp-eyed senior quickly caught the scent of the hunters and immediately locked onto the suspicious vehicle.
너 오늘 어디 갔다 왔어?
그 엄마랑 건우랑 짐 챙겨서 태영 씨네 집으로 갔어요.
일단은 건우한테 전화해서 어머니 모시고 딴 데로 빠지라고 해. 이 새끼들 언제 들이닥칠지 모르니까. 그리고 나가 주소 하나 보낼 테니까 그럼 살살 끌고 와봐. 우리가 잡아 쫓아보자.
After that, Woo-jin quickly told Gun-woo that they were being followed, and asked him to take the others to the boss's place and hide there for now. But just as they stepped out, Baek-jong's men noticed something was wrong through the surveillance feed. The moment they realized their plan had been exposed, they quickly called Baek-jong and begged him to send more people. If they could not get his mother, then they would go after Woo-jin instead. And just like that, a major clash was quietly closing in. When Gun-woo brought his mother and friends safely to the office building of the boss had already arranged a number of bodyguards to protect the 3 of them. At the same time, he also prepared a motorcycle for Gun-woo. so he could rush over to support Woo-jin and the senior. Once he made sure his mother and friend were safe, Gun-woo did not waste a single second and immediately sped toward the abandoned repair shop, because by then, Woo-jin had already lured them there.
너희냐,
Woo-jin and the senior started fighting the men on the spot, and both sides clashed fiercely. Since this man had once been an underground boxing champion, the two of them did not gain much advantage against him, and the senior was even pinned to the ground and badly beaten. Just as the senior was on the verge of passing out, Woo-jin, who had been knocked to the ground, forced himself back up and sent the man flying with a powerful kick. All three of them were bruised and battered, and the fight had fully reached its boiling point. After taking a small loss, the man immediately pulled out a knife and started wildly stabbing toward the two of them. To save the senior, Woo-jin caught the blade with his bare hand, and blood slowly ran down his arm. Maybe it was pure survival instinct, but just when his life was truly in danger, Woo-jin suddenly burst with strength and actually pushed forward against the knife and slammed the man to the ground. The senior seized the chance, rushed forward at once, and knocked the man unconscious with several hard punches to the face. But just as the two of them had barely caught their breath, Baek-jong arrived at the repair shop with more of his men. Every one of them was carrying a weapon, and the moment the two saw the situation turning bad, they turned and ran. But as they kept running, their path was suddenly blocked by a pile of cargo. Woo-jin had just managed to climb up, but the senior was not nearly as lucky, because the two of them had already been fighting for so long. They were completely drained by now, and with the enemy having far too many people, neither of them managed to escape, and both were eventually beaten to the ground. Then the scene cuts, and a motorcycle comes speeding in, just in time to witness Woo-jin and the senior being captured. Seeing how arrogant these men were, Gun-woo immediately took off his helmet and stepped into fighting mode with his riding gloves still on. Fortunately, these thugs had no real fighting skills at all, and only knew how to act tough when they had the numbers on their side. After more than half of them had been knocked to the ground, they completely lost the arrogance they had shown just moments earlier. No one even knew how much time had passed before the ground was covered with fallen bodies, and every last one of them had gone down under Gun-woo's fists. Meanwhile, back in the prison, Kang In-beom sat alone in the yard, filled with mixed emotions, unsure whether the message could really be trusted. But when the clock reached 1 o'clock, he still pulled the pill out from inside his sock and swallowed it in one motion. In less than a minute, Kang In-beom started foaming at the mouth, his whole body trembling before he collapsed to the ground. The officers quickly called for emergency help the moment they saw what happened. On the way to the hospital, they passed an abandoned gas station. The prison guard riding along thought they were stopping for gas, but the driver suddenly attacked him and caught him completely off guard. As expected, both prison guards were knocked unconscious and dumped by the roadside just like that. Afterward, the ambulance drove to an abandoned warehouse, and after some unknown liquid was injected into his body, Kang In-beom suddenly woke up from his unconscious state.
제가 강인범 씨 감옥에서 빼내준 사람이에요. 제안 받아주셔서 감사합니다. 앞으로 저희랑 같이 김건우 선...
Seeing a group of strangers appear out of nowhere, Kang In-beom became visibly tense, like a wild beast that had just broken loose. He rushed at them without asking any questions and started fighting on the spot. He hit with no restraint at all, and not a single thug could take even one punch from him. In less than 20 moves, more than a dozen men were already lying on the ground. To make an example out of them, Kang In-beom violently tore one thug's ear right off. That scene scared the rest of the men so badly that no one dared to step forward again. After that, Kang In-beom staggered toward the warehouse exit, and when he saw Baek-jong standing in front of him, he looked completely unwilling to submit, not knowing just how terrifying the man before him really was. Baek-jong had always been ruthless, and in one go, he completely beat Kang In-beom into submission, and from that day on, another dangerous enforcer was added to Baek-jong's criminal organization. So how will Gun-woo continue his road of escape after this? That is the core story of the first 2 episodes of Bloodhounds 2. If you like this series, the channel will continue updating the story for you. Alright, that is all for today's story, and I look forward to seeing you again next time.